morning again. Welcome to the journey. Welcome to those joining us online as well. Glad you're with us as we are continuing our series called The Red Letters, and we're looking at the words of Jesus. If you've ever maybe seen it in the Bible, not all Bibles do this, but most do. They have like when Jesus speaks, his words are kind of highlighted in red, where the rest of them are all black. And so we're looking at the words of Jesus as we're going through what is known as the Gospels. Matthew, Mark, Luke, John, they're the first four books in the New Testament, and they're all accounts of the life of Jesus. And so we're looking at his words as we begin this series, but also this is kind of the beginning of a year-long journey through the New Testament of the Bible. And so maybe you're new to the Bible, maybe you've read it, the whole thing, maybe you're trying to read it, whatever the case might be. I hope that this year, this might be a chance for you to get a better understanding of God's word, but even more so, a better understanding of God himself, that you might connect with him and experience how his words can bring you purpose and strength and peace and joy and whatever you're facing, his words can bring that life that you need. And so I hope that's the case for you as well. So as always, we talk about like following us on the YouVersion Bible app. You'll see that on the screen. There's a way you can follow us, and we have a Bible reading plan that we're doing. But the challenge is, as we work through the New Testament this year, the challenge is try to read through the whole New Testament with us. Again, maybe you've never read through the whole Bible before. Maybe this is a chance to read like half of it. We're looking at all 27 books that make up the New Testament. So that's kind of a challenge we're throwing out there. And we have a Bible reading plan right now to go through those first four books. Also, you'll see there's something called Events in the Bible app. We're also putting this on our blog. But if you are looking for more insight, if you're looking for additional resources to get a better understanding, to get more, and we have those on the event page and on the blog. So it's a chance to dive in a little bit deeper. And so today we're going to begin in the book of Matthew. If you want to turn there with me, if you want to turn on your Bible or open your Bible, words will be on the screen too. We're in Matthew chapter 5 through 7 today. We're looking at the Sermon on the Mount. It's one of the kind of most famous messages of Jesus. It's him speaking to a crowd. He's up on this kind of little mount on a little hillside, and he's speaking to all of these people who have gathered around. They're just common folks that have come to hear him teach, and he's sharing with them. And so we're in the book of Matthew. It's a great name for a book, Matthew. It's a good name. Matthew is one of Jesus' followers, one of his disciples. And so the book of Matthew is his firsthand account of his experience listening to Jesus and sharing Jesus' words with us. So let's look at these words together. So it begins, Matthew chapter 5, verse 3. It says this: "Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven." And before we jump in, I just think this is an interesting way to begin Jesus talking. He's giving kind of his manifesto for his kingdom. He's sharing what his kingdom is all about, and he begins with, "Blessed are the poor in spirit." Not blessed are the wealthy, or blessed are those who have it all together. Not blessed are the popular or the famous, but blessed are the poor, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. I don't know if you've ever felt like you didn't quite measure up. I don't know if you ever had that experience. Maybe in school you tried out for a team and you didn't make it out of tryouts, or maybe right now it's homecoming season at school and you learn kind of like where you kind of stand socially. Walked into a room and I felt like I just don't quite fit in here. I don't kind of measure up. You ever felt that way before? I had this happen this year a couple different times. We were at this conference for church leaders, and so there's a bunch of pastors and stuff there. We were on a break, and Mark was talking to someone, and I came over to talk to Mark, and Mark introduced me. "Oh, this guy, this is Matt. He's the lead pastor at our church." He goes, "You're the lead pastor?" I thought you were maybe the youth pastor or something. I'm like, "Yeah, I get it. And I've had this happen a lot where people, they don't really know I'm a pastor, and then they find out and they're like, "You're a pastor?" I'm like, "I know, you're crazy." Huh? And I feel that way. Like if I'm in a room of pastors, I'm not fancy enough. I can't hardly talk. I was just talking a minute ago. I'm stumbling over my words. I'm not the smartest one. I feel like I don't quite fit in or measure up. Definitely have that feeling. And so Jesus is talking to this crowd of people, just ordinary, regular people, but he has this message for all of them to say, like, yours is the kingdom. You are part of what I'm doing here. He says this again: "Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are those who mourn, for they will be comforted. Blessed are the meek, for they will inherit the earth. Blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, for they will be filled. Blessed are the merciful, and they will be shown mercy. Blessed are the pure in heart, for they will see God. Blessed are the peacemakers, for they are called children of God. Blessed are those who are persecuted because of righteousness, for theirs is the kingdom. Blessed are those when people insult you, persecute you, and falsely say all kinds of evil against you because of me. Rejoice and be glad, because great is your reward in heaven. And in the same way, they persecuted the prophets who were before you. See, in Jewish culture, and actually the culture of that day, not just Jewish culture, there was kind of this idea of if your life was going well, if you had fame or success or power or position, that meant you were blessed. And if you were sick, if you got an illness, it meant God is mad at you. That was how they would read into that. It kind of comes from like the Greek gods type things too. It's like if something bad happens, the gods must be mad at you. And see, Jesus flips the script. He says it's not the wealthy or the healthy or the powerful. He said, blessed are those who are poor, who are meek, who are mourning, who are persecuted. He says, yours is the kingdom. The kingdom of God is open to all of you. And this idea of like being blessed, that's like saying, not just like, hey, they're happy, but the idea of blessed, the Greek word they use there, is really kind of related back to the Greek gods again. It's like a divine favor. And Jesus says to all of these common people, the people who don't have it all together, the poor, the meek, the mournful, he says, you're blessed. God's favor is upon you. See, Jesus begins saying, my kingdom is one where I love and value you. It's built upon this idea, not that you have to be famous or successful or have it all together. It's built upon love and relationships. And it begins with Jesus valuing us. He values you. He ends that part we just read talking about the prophets that have gone before them. And he says, you're like carrying on the work that the prophets did. The prophets in the Old Testament were claiming about this coming Messiah. They were trying to pull the nation of Israel back to God. And he's saying, you have purpose just like they did to be this light, as it says. He goes on to say this. He says, you are the salt of the earth in verse 13. In the next verse, he says, you are the light of the world. A town or city built on a hill that can't be hidden. Neither do people light a lamp and put it under a bowl instead. They put it on a stand and it gives light to everyone in the house. In the same way, let your light shine before others. They may see your good deeds and glorify your Father in heaven. He says, you are valued. Other people might tell you you're an outcast, that you're a nobody. But in my kingdom, you can be the salt of the earth, the people who share God's faithfulness, who preserve life. He says you can be the light of the world, that when you do these things, that people might see God through your actions. He says other people might throw you away, might discard you, might not pay any attention to you. But Jesus says, I love and I value you, and you have purpose in my kingdom. So he kind of begins with the identity of the people in his kingdom. And then he goes on to first in verse 17, he says this. He says, do not think that I have come to abolish the law and the prophets. I have not come to abolish them, but to fulfill them. See, he's talking to the Hebrew people here, and they have this rich history. And they have these heroes of the faith like David and Moses. And think like Moses, how God passed on the law to Moses, and it was kind of the rules for their society, for their nation. And Jesus comes, I'm not coming to wipe that out. I'm coming to add to it, to fulfill it. And then he goes on and he talks about, in the next couple of verses, about some of like the 10 Commandments and different things in the law that they would talk about it. It's kind of almost a throwback, a reminder of where they've been. We saw this last week too, when Jesus was out in the wilderness fasting for 40 days. It was kind of a mirror of the nation of Israel when they were wandering in the desert, in the wilderness for 40 years. And he shared these words of Moses. And again, it kind of throws back to this kind of hero of the Hebrew faith of Moses. And he shares some of these things that Moses would share. When Moses was coming down the mountain to the nation of Israel after hearing from God, Jesus is on this mount sharing with his people. And he says this in verse 21, it says, "You have heard that it has been said to people long ago, you shall not murder." Thou shalt not murder is like that's one of the 10 commandments, right? And so he said, you've heard this from long ago, thou shalt not murder. And he says, anyone who murders will be subject to judgment. But I tell you that anyone who is angry with a brother or sister will be subject to judgment. And anyone who says to a brother or sister, Raka, is answerable to them in court. And anyone who says, you fool, will be in danger of the fires of hell. Jesus kind of takes it up a notch here. And that last part was like when he's talking about you fool or that Raka, that was like an insult. It was belittling someone else. He's saying, like people say, you've heard it said, don't murder. But Jesus says now, but don't be angry and don't belittle people. He goes on to say this, verse 27. You've heard it said, you shall not commit adultery. But I tell you that anyone who looks at a woman lustfully has already committed adultery with her in his heart. Again, another commandment. Don't commit adultery. Jesus takes it up. Don't even look at someone lustfully. Verse 31, you've heard it said, anyone who divorces his wife must give her a certificate of divorce. But I tell you that anyone who divorces his wife except for sexual immorality makes her a victim of adultery, and anyone who marries a divorced woman commits adultery. So Jesus shares these three kind of commandments. Like you've heard it said this way, but then he gives kind of this extreme opposite side of it, right? Like don't even be angry. Don't even look at someone lustfully. Don't even consider this divorce unless they've gone against you. This was kind of a way that rabbis would teach to be like, yes, they kind of share an extreme thing to bring it to the point of what he's trying to make. See, the point he was trying to make here isn't just about following the rules. It was about valuing people. See, Jesus already established his kingdom is built on his love and how he values us. And he calls us to love and value people in the same way. He gets to the root of the issue. See, they were having issues with some of these commands, and so he brings them up here. Like the one on divorce. In that day and age, men had all the power. Women had no say in anything. And so if a man got tired of his wife, if he found someone different, he would just kind of throw her aside. And Jesus like don't do that. Don't just waste this marriage. Don't just waste the situation. Like find value in each other. And like the idea of adultery, right? He said, don't even look at someone lustfully. What he's saying is, it's not just about following this rule. It's about valuing that person. Don't look at other people as property or as objects. Don't treat and use someone just for your pleasure. They're not an object. They're a child of God. They're made in God's image. Value them. So when you maybe encounter someone, like don't get angry and belittle them. Like you might be upset about someone, but don't take it out on that person. The whole point was like to value people. So he used kind of a big extreme end of it, but the whole point was value people just like God values us. And it goes on to talk about how do we do that even when it's not easy, right? And valuing other people, let's say like, yeah, we should all do that. But when we kind of live out our lives, it doesn't always go that way, right? It's not always easy. So he talks about how do we do this even when we face conflict. Verse 38, it says this, you've heard it said, eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth. An evil person. If anyone slaps you on the right cheek, turn them the other cheek. And then in verse 40, he says, if anyone wants to sue you and take your shirt, hand over your coat as well. And if anyone forces you to go 1 mile, go with them 2 miles. And give to one who asks, and do not turn away from one who wants to borrow from you. So here he's like, there's these situations when we are treated unfairly, when things don't go in a way that is easy, where there's conflict in a relationship. There's this idea of eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth, right? If someone does something to you, there should be equal ramifications for them to make it right. But Jesus says, instead of taking revenge out on this other person, he says, if they slap you on the right cheek, turn the other cheek. But it wasn't the idea of being a pacifist. See, in their culture, someone, if they were going to be demeaning to you, they would kind of backhand slap you on the right cheek. It's kind of a way to say, you're nothing to me, I'm superior to you. It'd be this kind of backhand slap. But if you were in a fight with someone that was your equal, it would be an open hand slap. And so what he was saying is, if someone demeans you, takes advantage of you, is not respectful to you, turn the other cheek as a way to say, let them realize we're equals here. You're not anything more important. Like, we're equals on this stage. It was a way to bring the human side into the situation. And then we see it talked about the idea of giving your coat if someone asks for your shirt, sues you for your shirt. It was the idea of if you would be generous with stuff, even when someone is being unfair to you, like your generosity will shine a light on their injustice, and people will be like, why did you take so much from that person? What did they do to you? Like, it almost like turns the tables on them. Same idea with the walk a mile. There was a rule that the Romans laid on the nation of Israel. The Romans were ruling this area at this time. And if a Roman soldier wanted someone to carry some of their equipment for them, they were required to go a mile and carry that equipment. And it says, if you're forced to walk a mile, walk two. Again, it was kind of a resistance to the situation to say, I'm going to do this now. I generosity because I want to bring kind of humanity into this situation. It's kind of an act of resistance and love all at the same time. What Jesus is really referring to here, again, is about this valuing other people. When life gets challenging and hard, don't just continue the cycle of hate and evil. Change the situation. Yes, you can take an eye for an eye, a tooth for the tooth. You can get the revenge and have this thing kind of settled as a way for equal payment. You can be upset, and when people want this from you, when people force you to maybe follow these rules you don't want to follow, but why continue the cycle of hate? Why continue the cycle of evil? He goes on to say this, verse 43, you've heard it said, love your neighbor and hate your enemies. But I tell you, love your enemies and pray for those who persecute you, that they may be the children of the Father in heaven. God, he causes the sun to rise on the evil people and the good. He sends rain on the righteous and the unrighteous. See, God values everyone. If you love those who love you, what reward will you get? And not even the tax collector is doing that. And if you greet only your own people, what are you doing more than others? Do not even the pagans do that? Like, if you just love the people that love you, if you only care for the people that care for you, that's really not a big gesture, is it? That's what he's saying here. Like everyone does that. Like, I see people that sometimes say, I'll be the nicest person in the world as long as you're nice to me. Oh, great. Like, what's that saying? Like, I had to be nice to you for you to be nice to me? That doesn't really say a whole lot, right? Jesus is saying that here. It's like everyone does that. But are you willing to love and value other people even when they don't treat you with the same value? That's what he's talking about. Think back to where we began. Blessed are the peacemakers. That's what he's calling us here. And now think of this. This is so applicable to our day and age, right? Like, it's just a cycle of hatred and talking bad about the other people. I mean, that's all you see on the news. That's like the politics. It's just like, how much can I hate the left? How much can I hate the right? And it's just like, they said this, and so we're going to do that. And it just goes back and forth, and it's almost ridiculous, isn't it? And Jesus is saying, don't break the cycle. Break the cycle. Be a peacemaker. He continues in the next chapter, chapter 6, and he kind of changes the topic to our heart issues, because our heart is really what we need to work on to be able to love and value other people. Chapter 6, verse 1, he says this, be careful not to practice your righteousness in front of others to be seen by them. If you do, you will have no reward from your Father in heaven. So Jesus is saying here, like, when you look to be religious, to do something in your relationship with God, like, don't do it as a show. And he goes on to talk about as you give and are generous to people, don't do it so everyone notices. When we pray in the streets, don't make a show out of it. When you are fasting, don't be like, oh, I'm fasting, I'm so hungry, and make a big show out of it to say, like, look at me. We see this in verse 5. It says this, and when you pray, Don't be like the hypocrites, for they love to pray standing in the synagogues and on the street corners to be seen by others. Truly, I tell you, they've received the reward in full. See, what would happen is there would be certain times of the day where they would stop in the streets and they would have kind of a nationwide prayer. And some people always happen to be in the center of everything whenever that time to pray would happen, and be like, look at them. They're so holy. Look at them. They're praying so much. And Jesus is saying, like, God looks at our heart. Don't make a show of this. God is more concerned about our heart. We see this not only with our relationship with him, but also with our money. It says this in verse 19. It says, do not store up for yourselves treasures on earth where moth and vermin destroy, where thieves break in and steal, but store up for yourselves treasures in heaven where moth and vermin do not destroy, where thieves do not break in and steal. For where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. Where your treasure is, there is your heart. Like, what do you treasure? What do you like value? Jesus is saying, don't put your value in don't put your value in yourself. That was kind of the earlier part, making a show to make people look to see how great you are. Don't put your value in possessions that are just going to fade away. Because serve two masters. Either you will hate the one and love the other, or you'll be devoted to one and despise the other. You cannot serve both God and money. And he goes on to talk about how God takes care of the lilies of the field, the birds of the air, and how he values us so much more than that. And so it says, seek first God and his kingdom. Like, make that the priority. But it all comes down to this kind of question of the heart. Jesus says, live open-handedly with your money, with your possessions. He says, live with open hands instead of closed fists saying, this is mine, this is mine. So he says, if you live with open hands, it kind of protects your heart. Otherwise, if you live to own stuff, the stuff will end up owning you. Think about that. If your heart is set on treasures, they can end up owning you. Think of it this way. I know some people say this, oh, I want to get a camper so we can go camping as a family, and that will be a cheaper way for us to go on vacation. So all we need to do is buy this huge camper and a new truck to pull it and pay for a campsite, and like we can have these great family vacations. And so then you buy all this stuff, and then you're like, oh, but I also want to get a jet ski or a snowmobile or something like that, and now there's more stuff, and there's never quite enough, right? And now all of a sudden you have all of these great things that you thought would make your life great, but what is added is all this financial pressure, and now you have to work more in order to afford these things. Insurance is going up. It costs more to have these things, whatever it might be. All of a sudden your stuff starts owning you. So Jesus says, don't fall into this trap. It's a heart issue first. Where your treasure is, there your heart will be. There's nothing wrong with having stuff until it gets to the point where you treasure that more than your relationship with God, where it takes away from your heart focus. Chapter 7, he kind of wraps it up and talking again about relationships. And he says this, do not judge, or you too will be judged. In the same way you judge others, you will be judged. And with the measure you use, it will measure to you. And so he's saying here, he goes on to talk about how some people, they have like this little problem and you might notice it. It's kind of like a little speck in their life, but like you notice it. And like in our mind, we're judging that person for that little speck. Notice that, he says, because there's often that same problem in our life, but instead of a little speck, it's like this big log in our life. It's like a big problem. But we notice that. So he says, don't judge each other. Instead, handle these situations, evaluating yourself and looking at them, evaluating the situation. Is it right to say something? Should I not? Like, handle all that with wisdom. It says this in verse 7. Ask and it will be given to you. This is talking about wisdom and how to handle relationships. Instead of being judgmental, it says, have wisdom. Ask and it will be given to you. Seek and you will find it. Knock and the door will be open to you. For everyone who asks receives, and the one who seeks finds, and the one who knocks, the door will be open. So he's saying if you want wisdom on how to handle these relationships, like ask for that and you'll get it. Verse 12, it says this, so in everything, do unto others as you would have them do unto you. This sums up the law and the prophets. This is like the golden rule, right? Treat other people the way you want to be treated. Again, putting value, the own value that you put on yourself, like extend that to someone else. And then he wraps up the whole Sermon on the Mount with this idea. When we're talking about like wisdom and value and stuff like that, I think the whole point of that is, again, to like in our relationships to have empathy, in our relationships to have wisdom, how to handle that. And the idea, again, is valuing the relationship, not being right. If we're looking at someone else and we see something maybe wrong in their life, are we quick to point out just because we want to be right? Are we quick to share our opinion just because we want to be right? Are we quick to tell someone what to do just because we want to be right? Here Jesus is saying, let's value the relationship more than trying to be right. And so he ends the chapter 7 with these 3 stories, kind of like a choice. There's these 2 paths, these 2 trees, and these 2 houses. Verse 24, it says this: anyone who hears these words of mine and puts them into practice is like a wise man who built his house on the rock. The rains come, the streams rose, and the winds blew and beat against the house, yet it did not fall, because it had its foundation on the rock. But anyone who hears these words of mine and does not put them into practice is like a foolish man who built his house on the sand. The rain came down, the stream rose, and the winds blew and beat against the house, and it fell with a great crash. Now, this illustration that Jesus shares, I think we can all relate to that a little bit living along the lakeshore, right? Like we've seen those houses along the lakeshore where there's the erosion and all the sand is falling off, and all of a sudden some of the houses actually crash and fall into the lake, right? We've seen that. And if they're gonna fix it, what do? They bring in these huge rocks and they put them all along the coast because the rocks are the firm foundation. And Jesus says here, like, what are you going to build your life on? Are you going to have a life that's built on like sand, or a life that's built on the rock? So when the storms come, when life isn't easy, when someone mistreats us, when we feel like we don't fit in, when we feel like life isn't going the way we want to, like, how are we going to face that storm? What foundation are we going to have? Jesus says, here is what I laid out for you. My kingdom is built upon this idea that's for the outcasts. It's for anyone, the common people. It's for anyone. You don't have to be famous. You don't have to have it all together. He says, my kingdom is one where I value and love people, but he calls us to value and love each other in the same way. When it comes to these situations, to not let the anger ruin our relationships, to not throw our anger around to other people, to value our marriages, to, in situations when someone treats us unfairly, to not take an eye for an eye, but treat the situation, bring humanity into the situation where there's value for each other. The idea of to not treat other people like objects for our own pleasure, to not go through life trying to prove our own point or trying to be right. He says, this is the way of my kingdom. And he says, if you want to have a foundation in life, this is the way we need to live. But he says here, not just taking these words, he says, those who take these words of mine and put them into practice. So I think often we can say, those are great words, Jesus, and we can agree with them, and we can admire them, but it doesn't say that. It doesn't say, just agree with these words, just admire these words. It says, put them into practice. That's when we experience the goodness of God in our life. That's when we experience a foundation to stand on. The question is, are you just hearing the words of God? Or do you want to put them into practice? He values you. He has so much more for you. And if we accept that and we treat other people that way, we can begin to build this foundation in life. Don't just hear these words of Jesus. Put them into practice. We close your eyes with me as we wrap this up. Maybe just think for yourself. Have you been just admiring the words of God? Or are you actually living them out? Just think about that for yourself. And we're all going to fail at times with that. But maybe you're like, I need to make a switch. God, in these moments, we thank you for your insight, for your guidance. We thank you for how you love and value us. And may we experience that love in such a way where it changes not only our life, but it changes how we see other people. May we see people with your eyes, God. May we value people the way you value us. May we not just settle for hearing these words, but will you convict our hearts of these words that we might treat other people the way you call us to, God. Build our life up on your words, God. Build our life that we might not invest in things that will fade away, not let our heart go sideways, but we might experience a heart focused on you. We look to you, God. In your name we pray.